So now we're dealing with Ketu in Cancer and Rahu in Capricorn. This is again where we've got balance between emotional Rashi Cancer and a material Rashi Capricorn. The way I wrote this up in the handout was this is balance between feelings, which is Cancer, and actions, which is Capricorn. Capricorn is actually the most powerful sign for actions, and that's why Mars is exalted in there. And of course, Cancer is the most feeling-centric sign, being ruled by the moon. So really, Cancer, like all movable signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, movable signs represent actions, initiations, actions. Cancer is actions that are based on feelings or feeling-provoked actions. And Capricorn is material-provoked actions, okay? Because it's an earth sign, which has to do with materiality. So when we take actions and the motivation is because of some material need, that's Capricorn. When we take actions because of some emotional need or desire, that's Cancer. So whenever we have Ketu and Rahu in this Cancer-Capricorn axis, it's always about the person learning to balance their emotional impulse for action with their material impulse for action. Okay? So balance between feelings and actions, meaning action, feeling-provoked action versus material-provoked actions. Now, when Ketu's in Cancer, we have a person who tends to be emotionally more introverted, emotionally more in control of their emotions and feelings, and more in control of what they allow those feelings to do. So those people are not usually the most spontaneous, real, emotionally flavored people. They're usually a little more in control of their whole emotional life. And that's because Ketu, again, is the flag. He's the fort where the army is. And of course, everyone runs like clockwork in there. And everything's regulated there. Everything's governed by law and order in that fort, in that army that Ketu represents. But Cancer is ruled by the moon, which is changeable. Every day the moon looks different. Moon bumps around the sky. Most changeable of all planets. And so Ketu and Cancer is sort of very much trying to create this controlled, secured environment in a realm that naturally is very changeable and uncontrolled. And that makes this actually a very difficult position because the emotions, Cancer, are not meant to be controlled, nor are they supposed to be controlled, and nor are they controllable. Okay? But Ketu still tries to do that. So these people tend to be a little too much emotionally protected and guarded, not emotionally spontaneous enough, not inclined to show their most innate feelings. They're more likely to show their second feelings. And when they're upset or sad about something, it's really, really hard for them to communicate what they're upset or bothered about. And so these people just tend to be emotionally very sort of isolated individuals when it comes to really connecting with their deepest emotions. Now, just like if Ketu is running things too tight that are not meant to be tight, eventually there's a breakdown. Ketu and Cancer will do that. Eventually these people with Ketu there will have emotional breakdowns. They'll have this emotional crisis where everything's just fine. They're running their typical even keel of emotional control. And then all of a sudden, something will happen that just breaks their back and they'll just fall into a really, a little short emotional crisis, an emotional breakdown. It might be 30 seconds. It might be as much as an hour. They'll get up, wipe their tears, and be as good as normal. And they'll do it all by themselves usually. And they usually don't want assistance with dealing with their emotional needs. So you won't see actually a lot of people coming to astrologers with Ketu and Cancer. Okay? Because they're very protected with their emotions and like to deal with that on their own. Ketu is sort of a planet that always represents where we like to sort of deal with things on our own usually. Although depending on the house that could change. Now the other interesting thing about Ketu and Cancer is that they can be around people who are emotionally very upset and cheer them up really easily. They don't get down because their friend or partner or loved ones are down. They're still able to maintain a good attitude. But when they're in a bad mood, or they're having a bad day, or they're sad, there's really nobody that can really pull them out of it real well. So they're very great at pulling people out of the dumps of their emotional pain, but they're very hard to pull out of their own emotional pain, except by doing it by themselves. So, emotions. Now, these people are very prompted to act upon their emotions, but in a very controlled and disciplined way. Okay? So Ketu in Cancer is always going to do exactly what it feels like doing, but not with a lot of drama. They'll just go about and do exactly what they want to do. They won't talk about it. They won't give you a signal about it. Just all of a sudden, they'll just decide this is what they feel like, and they're doing it. And if you had other things planned, or the person they're with had other things planned, they won't even get a phone call saying, I don't feel like doing this usually. They'll just go. So they just are completely emotionally going to act upon what they want to act upon, and they're not really going to be aware usually about the effects that their emotions, or that their actions, which are emotionally motivated, are having on other people. One client I had who had this position said it perfectly, I think. She said, people just don't really understand me. They don't understand why I'm doing things. And they would just emotionally feel like doing this, so they do it. But the problem is, they wouldn't explain why they were doing that to the other people involved, or be open about it, or let the people in to understand why they needed to do that. They just weren't sharing their feelings. And as a result, they had lots of problems in their relationships, as you can imagine. So these people have to be really cautious about being emotionally selfish, which means not sharing their emotions with people who want to share them. It's a very hard thing for them to do, actually, because they do feel very vulnerable emotionally. Ketu is trying to create security, but again, it's always has an element of vulnerability to it. They're actually very sensitive emotionally, so that's why they have that protection of Ketu. Okay, so that's sort of how the Ketu in Cancer person is. They're not really aware about how their emotionally affected actions are impacting other people, or if they do, they're not concerned enough with it to really explain and be understood by those people. So again, that puts them in a little more emotionally isolated place in their lives. Okay? I've also seen these people sometimes, when they really get touched, when something really touches their emotions, they'll just spring to life very emotionally, and they'll just be, very emotional and very happy or whatever, very excited about something. And then, then a few hours later, they'll catch themselves and they'll downshift and go back to their normal emotional keel. So I've had men who've had women in their lives, girlfriends who've had this, and when the man does just the right thing, the girl will get really excited and lively, and the guy thinks that, all right, she's really in love with me, and then, the next day, she downshifts and she's just on this totally disciplined, not showing any extra emotions thing. So it's a difficult placement for relationships, and they don't realize how their emotional control oftentimes limits the sharing they have with people. Okay? And especially if it's in a people-centered house, that can become pretty huge. Now, Rahu in Capricorn, this is the void here, means it's not sure about its material actions. Okay, this is the darkness of Rahu is clouding their material actions, which means they're not really focused on choosing their actions, deciding what they're going to do based on the material life, what's around them. That includes the people. Ketu is so emotionally motivated that it does what it feels like doing without really paying attention to Rahu up here, which is saying what you're doing is going to have material consequences. What you're doing can affect your income, your livelihood, the people in your life. They just don't see that. Rahu makes them blind to that. So, because they're blind to that, things tend to go wrong. If we're not paying attention to how our actions are affecting our material life, things are just going to sort of go wrong, and we're not going to really understand why that is. And so as a result of that, Rahu in Capricorn tends to start getting worried about material things working out. They can always see the things that can go wrong in anything they do. In everything we do, there's 100 things that could possibly go wrong, right? Okay? And Rahu in Capricorn becomes really aware of those 100 things that can go wrong. And so there's a tendency, especially at first, for Ketu in Cancer to withdraw from those things, to not involve themselves in the things where everything can go wrong, because when things go wrong, it hurts Cancer. Okay? It hurts the emotion. So rather than risking things going wrong, lots of times Ketu in Cancer, will not let Rahu in Capricorn try things. Okay? It'll just try to stay emotionally closed and not involve itself in things that could possibly go wrong, which is everything. So Rahu becomes really aware about everything that can go wrong. At some point, Rahu tries to take charge of that and says, well, everything can go wrong. I can imagine everything that can go wrong. So I'm going to ensure that everything goes right. And then Rahu in Capricorn gets really focused about doing things in such a way that it can only work right, taking every precaution, being extremely prepared for the worst eventuality. Okay, you know that type of quality of people who are always prepared for the worst possible thing that can happen. And that ends up making Rahu and Capricorn a little bit over-controlling. Because they have their own fears and worries, which are Ketu and Cancer, they compensate by trying to make Rahu make everything more secure. So if they're in a hot room and there's a draft coming in the door and everyone's enjoying it, and that draft gets a little cold to them, they'll right away think, geez, I might get sick in this cold draft, and they'll go over there and close the door, or ask for the door to be closed, not really caring that everyone else is actually enjoying the cool air. To them, it's a safety thing. It's cold air, I might get sick, I better close the door, I better get the door closed. And so Rahu in Capricorn tends to be controlling of the people around it and the environment around it, because it wants to ensure that nothing can go wrong. Okay? But of course, things will still go wrong. And lots of times, the more we try to make things go right, the more things go wrong. So Rahu in Capricorn just finds more and more of their fears coming to realization, and the material world, therefore, being a more and more difficult place. How I wrote it here is there could be self-centered control with the hope of preventing the realization of their fears. And that's exactly what it is. They are only able to consider their own feelings about what can go wrong, and then they try to control those things. So it's a very self-centered type of control that they have. So this position sort of can bring out the more difficult parts of Cancer and Capricorn. Okay? Now the breakdown stage of Rahu and Capricorn is that a person just gets completely dejected and unhappy. Basically, they can become completely depressed. Okay? Because they're not able to find the material satisfaction they want here. If everything is threatening in the world, eventually it's depressing to do anything. If everything is so much work to control and make sure it's going to work right, the rewards of those things are just exhaustion and no joy. So Rahu in Capricorn, as long as it's compensating, it doesn't have the capacity to enjoy the things that they're hoping for. It's all just work, 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 and control, and do what ensures things working out right instead of possibilities of going wrong. And as a result, they just can't find happiness. Even if they get the thing they want, the immediate thing is worrying about the things that can happen to that thing. And so there's just no joy in their lives, and so there's just complete depression. And of course, Jupiter, the planet of joy, gets debilitated in Capricorn. Okay? So as a result, you can see how this Capricorn tendency is to easily get depressed to begin with. Okay? Because it doesn't have a Jupiter vibe to it at all. It sucks Jupiter. It sucks happiness, which is the way to say it. So what Rahu and Capricorn needs to learn to do, it needs to learn to consider how its actions are affecting the things around them. And that a lot of its actions are actually done out of a need to protect itself, or actually creating the circumstances. So for instance, in a relationship, Rahu and Capricorn might have the fear of getting abandoned by their loved one. So what do? They try to control their relationship and even control the loved one so that the relationship is sure to be successful. And in doing that, they end up driving their partner away. Okay? So through trying too hard almost, Rahu and Capricorn ensures that their worst fears come realized. So Rahu and Capricorn needs to learn to just do what it can materially, what makes common sense, and then forget about it. Okay? And then just let it go. You know, to take the material actions that are proper and intelligent, and then come back to Cancer over here, and then be happy and satisfied with what one's done, and secure with one's own feelings. Okay? Because ultimately, what Ketu and Cancer wants to learn how to do, it wants to be completely emotionally dependent. I mean, it doesn't want its feelings hurt by anything in the world. And that's a realistic goal, but it's a very high goal, right? So, as long as they're not secure about what their actions are doing in the world and what the world can give them, which is Rahu and Capricorn, they really won't be feeling secure about, they will never really be feeling emotionally completely dependent. They'll always feel like the world can possibly hurt them. Once they learn how to manage life's material affairs, to do things in a way that they meet with success, and also Saturn and Capricorn to realize that there's only so much they can do, and after that they just have to let it go and be detached about it. Once they learn to do that, things start working out for them, and as things start working out for them, the world starts feeling like a safer place to them, because they know even if something goes wrong, I'll be able to do it. And see, and that's one of the key things. Rahu needs to get enough capacity in operating in the world and dealing with material things, that Rahu starts feeling like, even if the worst thing happens, I've still got the capacity to deal with this material problem. So that's what Rahu really needs to learn. No matter what happens, I can deal with it when it happens. Remember, Mars is exalted in Capricorn. Mars is the guy that comes out when there's an emergency. He doesn't come, he's not out all day long. Now, it's not like the military is patrolling the city all day long. But when there's an emergency in the city, the military comes out. And that's exactly what Mars is like. He is the military and everything. And the police. So Rahu and Capricorn needs to learn to let things just sort of flow. And again, Rahu is an even sign. It's a feminine sign. It's a sign of letting things go with the flow more. So Rahu needs to learn to let things go with the flow more materially. And then trust that when there is an emergency, they'll be able to use the strength of Capricorn to deal with that emergency, which is being able to deal with any material problem that comes. You know, Saturn rules Capricorn. Saturn, like Mars, is this problem-solving planet. That's its best when life gets tough. So, developed Capricorn takes it easy, is relaxed, goes with the flow, but when things go wrong, that's when they're at their best. Undeveloped Capricorn, which is Rahu in Capricorn, is afraid that everything can go wrong, therefore is always trying to prevent that, and misses the one thing that actually does go wrong. And so they're too drained, too exhausted, too worn out, too broke to deal with that problem when it comes. So they really need to learn to deal with an emergency when there is an emergency, and until then to go with the flow of life. And at that point they'll be emotionally much more secure and safe in the world, and usually much more emotionally expressive as well. So a bit of a tough position, this one. I think it's that, Cancer Capricorn is such a tough axis. It's the natural 4th and 10th houses, which so much of the foundation of our lives is based on. So it's definitely a tough position, that one. Okay. The other option is we get Ketu and Capricorn and Rahu and Cancer. So now, with this position, we've got Ketu and Cancer, someone who's very secure in taking the material actions that they need to succeed in their goals or to fulfill their ambitions or to, fulfill their responsibilities in the world, whatever. So they're very secure in their actions to do. Okay? This makes these people capable for the most part, confident when it comes to dealing with any type of worldly thing. But what they don't understand is Rahu and Cancer, which is how their emotions are stirring up their lives. Ketu and Capricorn in its own little perfect world thinks, as long as I can control and manage all my material responsibilities, everything in life is going to be safe and good. I got enough money in the bank, I own my own property, I even have a farm out back to grow food. I can manage everything I need to have a healthy life here on Earth. But Rahu in Cancer is going, well, not really. If you're not paying attention to what you're feeling, Rahu in Cancer, and you're not paying attention and don't know about how your emotions are affecting your decisions, then really you're not in charge materially at all. Okay? So Ketu in Capricorn thinks it's got it all together materially. But then Rahu in Cancer brings these emotional events into their lives where their feelings end up tearing everything apart. They'll have feelings about things that disrupt something in their lives. They'll act out emotionally. They'll, something will happen that will hit them so hard it knocks them off their feet. They just don't have the emotional strength to deal with it. So Ketu is materially strong and secure. Now in Rahu in Cancer is all about getting emotionally strong. Okay? And emotionally strong means getting in touch with one's emotions and understanding how their emotions are part of their lives, and as that, how that also affects their material life. So how this sort of starts is Rahu's initial attitude is one of emptiness when it's in Cancer. The people just don't feel emotionally fulfilled. Ketu and Capricorn's going, yeah, I can do it all materially. No problem. But something's missing, and the missing is Rahu and Cancer just making them feel this emptiness. The void now is in the feelings, Cancer, in the heart. Okay? And of course Cancer represents the breast here and the heart area of the body. So that part's empty, and the people just suffer from emptiness. So, having that emptiness of Cancer, what are they going to do? Well, they're going to compensate through Ketu, right? They're going to take care of things. Ketu's Capricorn is the manager, the one who's responsible for everything, the one that takes care of everything. And that's what they're good at. So in trying to fulfill that emptiness of Rahu, they resort to Ketu's strengths, and they try to take care of everything. They mother everybody and everything. They mother their children to death. They mother their partner to death. They try to take care of other people as a way to escape their own emptiness. So these people, especially when they're women, will be givers, givers, givers to a fault, meaning they're taking care of others in an effort to sort of forget about their own emptiness. Okay? Men, when they have this, won't be usually givers as much as women who have this, but what they do is they try to accomplish in order to overcome that emptiness. Okay? And of course that's not going to happen because they're good at this. And they still have the emptiness of Rahu and Cancer. So doing more of Ketu and Capricorn, taking care of more things, accomplishing more things, isn't going to remove this emptiness of Rahu. And so then they get broken down and depressed and fall into deep depressions. So you'll see Rahu and Cancer creating a lot of depressive people. It's a depression, it's a mark of depression in the chart just to have Rahu and Cancer, as it is in Capricorn. Okay? So, then there's a depression. There's nothing material that can get them out of that depression. What do they need to do? They need to develop Cancer, which means they simply need to develop emotional roots. Okay, they have to get in touch with their feelings. They have to learn how to feel and make feelings part of their lives. And that means listening to their first feeling, not their second or third feelings. Okay? First feelings. Say in a relationship, when a guy says to a woman, I don't want to see you anymore. The first feeling is heartbreak. Rahu and Cancer won't show that first feeling though. It's going to show the second feeling, which is throwing a plate at the person and yelling at them and telling them, well, I never wanted to be with you, you're such an idiot, whatever. Those are second feelings. Rahu and Cancer need to learn to get in touch with their first feelings. And once they learn to do that, they can realize that there's a whole world of fulfillment open to them. But that world of fulfillment is only open to them if they listen to their first feelings and learn how to make that part of their lives. So these people basically just need to get more emotionally in touch with themselves, of what they're really feeling and what they're really needing, and then be open to the world giving them that thing. One of the ironic things about Ketu or Capricorn, which is their strength, is that Capricorn thinks it's responsible for everything in its life. That's just the nature of Capricorn. It thinks that it's responsible exactly for what's happening in its life and exactly how things are. So when Cancer, Rahu in Cancer gets a need, there's this emptiness in the need, Ketu and Capricorn thinks they have to go make that need fulfilled. They have to do it themselves with their own arms and legs and strengths and intelligence. But the ironic thing with this is Capricorn is a female sign, which means it's a receptive sign. It's not a sign of initiation through what, in the sense of a masculine, let's do it type thing. Capricorn is a sign of receiving and then running with it. So it's not the quarterback deciding where he's going to throw the ball. It's the wide receiver who catches the ball and then decides where he's going to run with it. So what that means is, in fulfilling its emotional needs, Rahu in Cancer, instead of chasing the emotional need it has, which always ends up in greater depression, they need to see what the world is right in front of them, what can be given to them right now. And then they need to take whatever is the most emotionally fulfilling thing in their lives in front of them, take it and make the most out of it. But usually the opposite happens. They automatically think, if it's in front of me, if it's being offered to me by the world, I don't want it. I have to go get something else. And so in relationships, these people can be with a partner who's good for them. But instead of saying, oh, this is the partner that God's giving me and I need to make the most of this relationship to find happiness here, they instead cheat on that partner or run off with somebody else or fall in love with somebody else once a week or something because they feel they have to make the decision. They have to go for it. So Rahu in Cancer needs to learn to develop its feminine side, which is the receptive side of us, which means being receptive to what the world has to offer that will give fulfillment, emotional fulfillment in Cancer, and then take that thing and run with it. Okay, and make the most out of it. The Tao Te Ching has a really good little quote that I think covers Rahu in Cancer. And that is, know the male, but stick to the female. Okay? The female is the receptive side. Anytime we receive something, we're being female. Anytime we do something, we're being male. So the Tao Te Ching says, know the male, but stick to the female. And that's something Rahu in Cancer really, really, really needs to learn how to do. Be female and see what life presents it. And then take the best thing presented and be male with it and make it happen. Do something with it. But the tendency with Rahu in Cancer is to be the opposite. It's to be the male and wonder where the female is, okay? I have a need, therefore I'm going to run and chase it and get it, and it never is fulfilled. So once they learn that more receptive quality, receptive feminine quality, at that point, they're able to do actions, Ketu and Capricorn, that are fulfilling, okay, that create fulfillment, but only because they're receptive to the possibilities instead of running after things that aren't possible, okay? And then Ketu